Welcome to this NG-IoT webinar. Usual housekeeping, as you know, and as is current practice for us, we record the webinars. So we assume your consent by the fact that you are participating, that you agree to the recording of the webinar. If you don't want to be recorded, we ask you to leave the webinar. Today, we have Dr. Antonio Kung. Antonio probably doesn't need any introduction for the people who are in this community. He is a renowned expert on security and privacy, contributing to many European research projects and many standardization activities. He's from Trialog, based in Paris. And Antonio, over the years of his contribution to the field, has developed an expertise which we find very relevant also from the work in which we are involved in NG-IoT. So this is why we have asked him to speak about integrating privacy in the IoT ecosystem. So before I give the floor to Antonio and then we have a Q&A session, I want to give the floor to our colleagues from Istituto Italiano Privacy, which are the co-hosts of this webinar, which is organized within the framework of NG-IoT Work Package 2. So I give the floor to Francesco Capparelli from IPAN.
Thank you, Pasquale. We are very glad that you join us today, and I would like to thank you, Dr. Kung, for his participation today with us. And I would like to thank you all because those webinars are trying to enhance our knowledge on the IoT field, and I would like to thank you all for joining us every week. Right now it's every week, and I leave the floor to Dr. Kung in order for him to share with us his expertise. Thank you again.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. First of all, I have to say I'm not a doctor. I would love to be a doctor, in particular in medicine, but I'm not. Anyway, I have lots of experience in privacy. So the outline of my presentation, I'm going to introduce myself, then explain why I'm using the term ecosystems, okay, with some examples. Then to explain that we need to integrate privacy, and I'll take from two viewpoints. One is how do we integrate privacy in the engineering, the technical people, how do they do it, okay? And then how we must integrate it in the IoT ecosystem. I take two projects as example, PDP4E, Interconnect. I could have taken many others, but those are projects in which I am involved, so that's easier. And then I will get back to how standards are taking that into account. First of all, background of myself, I have to say I'm an engineer, okay, and my background is on embedded systems and real-time systems, automotive, smart homes, and things like that. I got into those things, and about 15 years ago, I started to work on privacy, okay, and 20 years ago on security, by the way. You see here a list of projects, but I put in red those which I mentioned, even though those some others are important. For instance, privacy surveillance, you might believe that today it's maybe a very important topic with our situation. And 5 years ago, I was involved in standardization, and I became maybe the most active person working on privacy standards. And I will mention briefly a few of them, probably the last one on smart cities. Okay. So I will start with why do we have to take an ecosystem viewpoint? And basically, I got this because I was working in smart cities. Okay, and the smart cities, they have to understand. Well, they know that they are dealing with ecosystems, but actually the impact of this, I think, is not highlighted enough. Okay, so first of all, they deal with complex ecosystems, because we have smart cities, but that's one viewpoint. We have big data, another viewpoint, IoT, another viewpoint. So we could sometimes say you have a domain ecosystem or a technology ecosystem. Okay. But before that, we had domains. We said, I'm working in transport, I'm working in health, I'm working in smart grid, and the like, okay? And of course, today we have lots of technologies that all have impacts. We're talking about blockchains, AI, autonomous systems, okay? And then we have all those transversal concerns. Okay, so safety, security, we're interested by privacy, but of course it includes the rest. And of course, at the end of the day, who are the stakeholders and what are the benefits to them? Okay, so citizens, privacy obviously, but also business. Okay, so because privacy can impact the business positively or negatively, and of course the policymakers. So if we look at smart city, when they deploy we call it an IoT system or a system, okay, they have to manage the privacy. Manage is make sure they understand what's going on because they might have some responsibilities, okay? We all know that when it comes to privacy, the legislation explains about the data protection controller or data protection processor, okay? But actually, the people who are managing the ecosystem, they also have a relation to those responsibilities. Sometimes they are data controllers, sometimes they are not. They are just above it, okay? So basically, when you deploy a system, you have to deal with the citizens because they might make requests to you about what the municipality is doing about the data and things like that. The municipality must make sure that proper risk assessment or privacy impact assessment, as we say, are there, that proper data sharing agreements are there and available for him to check, okay? And of course, contracts when they are deploying things, okay? So we have some stakeholders, citizen data controllers, data processors, integrators, and suppliers, which have either direct obligations or requirements provided by the data controller and data processor, okay? So just one opinion, I used to call it integrator, but the solution provider is a stakeholder that I think is a little bit neglected when it comes to responsibilities, because you might have an integrator solution provider which doesn't fall into those categories. And he could believe that he doesn't have to follow GDPR. And I think, of course, this is wrong. So the reason why they have to have those ecosystems is because the smart city officer must have an understanding of the supply chain. Okay, obviously the reason is because the data is flowing from the bottom, so the sensors, up to the applications. Okay, and of course a leak, a privacy leak, can occur at any place in the supply chain. And if there is an issue, he must understand what's going on. He must make sure he's able to track back and to repair if there is a breach, privacy breach. At the highest level, we have new things that's provoked by data analysis and big data. Okay, so we have what I call the sharing chain. So we have stakeholders that are sharing data, building new data and things like that. And actually in the link, as you are building connections between data sets, you of course can create information that are about the privacy, and you have to be careful. So another example now is that once we understood that ecosystems are those things, what is the governance, how we will actually influence the way this is handled, okay? And so this is a simple model. I'm sure it is a model which any smart city will have in mind. So the smart city must apply somehow a governance process. Of course, he can be assisted by another company, but somehow a governance process must happen so that each application operator, so I call it IoT system 1, system 2, system 3, system 4, 5, those are different applications. They are operated maybe by different organizations, so that actually there is a kind of relationship, and this relationship to me it's of governance nature. That is actually there will be policies that will be decided there and they will be followed. Okay, so if I got a little bit more into the details of what this is. And by the way, this is a picture which has been proposed to a document in ITU focus group for data processing management. I think it's deliverable, I think 4.2. Pasquale will help me on that one, okay? So, but this is exactly this. A smart city must apply a governance process to monitor. So I put an example, a smart transport operator, for instance, local transportation, and he's monitoring that they follow the security and privacy policies that they have established, okay? And of course, the smart city, the smart transport operator will apply security, will follow those security and privacy policies when it is building his system and managing his data. Okay, so this is typically one of the things that we have to take into account. Now that we understood that ecosystems are important, how do we integrate it in a proper manner? And the first thing is, of course, how do we integrate when we engineer an IoT system? Okay, so I'm taking now into account the example of a project, PDP4E, and an example of application, connected vehicles. So this is from the PDP4E H20 project, is ongoing. My company is the coordinator, and University of Madrid is a scientific manager. Okay, so the idea is the following: we have on top the typical practice for IoT system engineering. Okay, so this is, we're not working on that. This is mature, or of course it has its other challenges, but we want to include the privacy methods into this so that actually we are integrating the privacy in IoT system engineering. Okay, how do we do that? Well, actually, we use, and this is the only thing that is a bit specific to this project, we use models, okay? And you know that when it comes to engineering, in the past, people were doing models. So this is the first model we ever saw, actually. So Wikipedia for engineers that are working, building locomotives, okay? So in order to do this, they built this one, and this model was working. This picture from the 19th century, okay? So basically the idea is you would build a working representation of a full-size machine, okay? And when it comes to system and software, we do the same. We also call them models, but basically they are specifications which you can process. That's the thing, okay? So it's the way the engineers will work. I'm not getting more into that because it's just, that's an approach, okay? But so where do we apply this? Okay, so we have 4 engineering processes that are important when it comes to privacy. One is the risk. So what are the privacy breaches that may happen? How do you solve it? Okay. Then you have to come up with the requirements. What are the requirements that you have to apply to solve the solutions that you put in place? Okay. And you have here a number of properties that are well known. Then you build a system. This is what we normally call privacy by design, okay? And you will include here measures, okay? Often people think that it's only technical measures, but we all know, actually, the security people always say we have organizational and technical measures. It's both together, okay? And last but not least, because you need to have trust, you need to have what we call assurance, okay? And here in assurance, you can have the assurance of the system. Is my system properly implemented? You can have the assurance of the process. Did I use the right approach to design my system? And last but not least, which is actually missing, is how you need to have the assurance of the ecosystem. Is the ecosystem managing it properly? Okay, so all those things are well known. I would say that maybe the last one, ecosystem assurance, is a little bit of a challenge because I have not seen any attempt to, let's say, express that. Okay, so this is what we are doing in the project, just to show that there are tools that were available here. I'm not going into detail, and companies that are working on them, okay? So this is typical, of course, of European research projects. We try to cover a good scope of the work, okay? So enough advertisement for this project. I want to get more into the problems, okay? So when you have a look at this, actually, we are not solving everything. That's why, of course, in H2020, we have still new projects and new things, okay? So I want to mention a number of things that are not well managed, okay? First of all, when it comes to risk, how do you aggregate the risk assessments of multiple systems which you integrate, okay? This is a major issue that smart cities will have. When it comes to requirement, it's going to be the same. How do you combine the requirements of multiple systems into something consistent? This is not obvious, okay? Privacy by design is also the same. You have different systems. They provide privacy preserving capabilities. When you combine them, how do you combine them? Do you get a better privacy capabilities? We don't know, okay? And the thing I mentioned in the previous slide, when it comes to assurance, how do we make sure that the smart city or other ecosystem apply the right organizational and technical measures to make sure that privacy preserved. And this is, I would say, totally empty today. Okay, and we also say, engineers say, it's a system of system problems. There are a number of standards that are being published on that one. It was published actually only in August, and they are very high level, and they need to be enhanced, I'm telling you, for the future on privacy. So now I want to show an example, because those are concepts, and the best is to go through examples. We all know about the connected vehicles. This is some work that has been ongoing for about nearly 20 years, and now we are on the verge where people think of the deployment. Okay, sometimes we call it V2X, for vehicle to, so V2X stands for V2V, vehicle to vehicle, and vehicle to I, vehicle to infrastructure. It means that the vehicles are able to exchange messages, and also to exchange messages with the infrastructure. Okay, so what is called message here. Okay, so one application is what we call cooperative awareness message. This is actually an ETSI standard that has been published a couple of years ago, but the work on this has at least 10 years. Okay, basically what it says is that we send in real time the position of the vehicle, the movement of the vehicle, some static info about the vehicle, the ID, and a recent path. I mean, in the past 30 seconds. Okay, so this decision already past 30 seconds is already something about privacy, because we don't want to track the car all the time. Okay, but the benefit of this, and this is sent in real time, so like 10 messages per second, is that the vehicles then can understand whether they have to avoid an accident. So this is really for safety. You are going to use this for safety, and of course the idea is to get to the fact that there will be zero accident in the future. This is one of the policies that are of the DG Move. Okay, so we had this, and actually the project started in the early 2000. I was actually coordinator of a project called Sevecom, okay, and it started in 2006. And actually, the idea at that time was we want to solve the security, okay, because we don't want people to attack the system, okay. But in 2007, there was a EDPS opinion on the eCall, so it's a function for upon accident, where they say that there is a privacy issue, okay. So we were asked to change the scope of our project to cover privacy. And we came up with the unlinkability issue, that the car never sends a fixed address, so it sends a pseudonym, so that actually during 30 seconds, basically the idea is you know that's the car, the same car, but actually otherwise you do not know whether it's the same car. Okay, that's the idea. Okay, but this has a profound impact in the whole infrastructure. First of all, the communication technology is fully changed, okay, but drastically changed, okay. And then the pseudonym, you must trust it, so it's the integrity of it. Then you have a certificate, you have asymmetric encryption, and you have a certification authority, okay, which are called a pseudonymization authority. So we suddenly add a new stakeholder in the picture, okay? So you see that the ecosystem is fully impacted by the fact that you want to have privacy, okay? And I tell you, this is already quite accepted all over the world. This thing is the same picture we see in Japan, in Europe, and in the US. So when you look at the impact of this, is a real ecosystems, okay? And I'm oversimplifying. So you have the car, you have the car manufacturer. Actually, I didn't even mention it, because the car manufacturer could play the role of what I'm showing here. So you have the message operator. So actually you have a subsystem that collects the data and sends the data. 99% of the case, that would be the car manufacturer, but it could be actually another operator, okay? Then you have the operator of the onboard safety. So this would be rather the car manufacturer. Okay. Then you have the operator of the roadside unit. Okay, and that could be the road operators, transport operators, things like that. Then you get up, you have the application operator for safety, for traffic, and things like that. And then you have the technology operator, the PKI operator. Okay, so all those stakeholders, they look at the system as the different viewpoint, and they have different privacy issues and different security issues. So when you do the design of the system, actually each of them must have its specific privacy impact assessment, and yet you have to have the overall view, okay? And then when you deploy it, you make sure that the thing works. So you have this ecosystem assurance problem, okay? And this is the problem for the future. We do not cover it. I have not seen any single project or large-scale project dealing with this, but this is going to be in the next generation, I'm sure, a problem. So once we have this, I mentioned now I was working specifying actually the things on engineering. Now, how do we integrate this in an IoT ecosystem? Okay, so I'm going to take the example of interconnect. Interconnect is a big large-scale pilot that started in I think it was in October. 50 partners and 35 million euros, or the other way around. I think it's 50 partners, 35 million euros funding, okay? And so you have the list of partners, so you have 50 members. It covers the energy value chain, so you have the grid, but you also have smart buildings and smart home. And they are going to work because, of course, we not only have privacy and security, but we have the application and actually the operation of those ecosystems. So they will work on 7 pilots in Greece, France, Portugal, Netherlands, Germany, Belgium, and Italy. Okay, and obviously, when you deploy this, you have to take into account security and privacy. So there is a task which I think Trialog is leading on security and privacy. So what we came up with is what we call a SPOCS, security and privacy plan process. Okay, basically the idea is each of those pilots ecosystems, we could call them baby ecosystems because they are large-scale pilots, but they're not as large as the real ecosystems that we put in place. So they are there because we want to understand what's going on and to learn, okay? So in those baby pilot ecosystems, we will define a security and privacy plan templates for the pilots. The template will include things such as context of ecosystem, governance aspect, data management plan, risk management plan, engineering plan, citizen engagement plan. Okay. Once we have the template, we will define the precise plans for the pilot. So we use the template to define the precise plans. Okay. Again, those are pilots ecosystems, so they are representative, but maybe not with the full extent of all the problems. So once we have done that, the lessons from those pilots will be used to promote this POX at standardization level, because this could be then useful at the general level for smart cities in general. Okay, we are not starting from scratch, and I want to mention that Interconnect, but also others have just started and are the follow-up of other large-scale pilots. In particular, there was a wave of large-scale pilots that are on the verge of completing, called the European large-scale pilots. We have here the website, and there was a support action which is on the verge of completing, Create IoT, which is a kind of a predecessor to NG-IoT. Okay, and there are a number of deliverables that are available. Of course, we will use them because we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We'll inject new stuff. That's the only thing. So I want to get to the privacy standards. How do we deal with that? And I will show an example. Okay. First of all, Trialog is member of IPAN. IPAN is an informal community for privacy engineers. Okay, IPAN stands for Internet Privacy Engineering Network. Okay, and this is promoted by EDPS. Every year they create a they have a workshop and discuss about the advance and how it can help. Okay, in 2015, so I think it was 16. It was created in 2015, 5 years ago. In 2016, there was one workshop in Belgium, and where I presented again standardization, and we said that maybe we should have some information to share. Okay, so I created this wiki. Okay, this wiki is for IPAN wiki. It's just that the Trialog is doing it, and you can see that there are 3 things that are promoted. One is the standards, one are projects. So those of you who have projects that are of interest, you can put them. It's just I can create an account. So obviously you see prepare, PDP4E, Paris, and things like that, and you also events. So I should actually have added the webinars. I have to realize, okay. And but maybe the most important link is the ISO. The reason is because that's the place where you have all the many standards ongoing, and this is this page, okay. This page is widely accessed, I think, from the creation 2016. You have about 400,000 hits here, okay? And it includes, not getting into detail, but it includes, I would say, the description of the published standards. So you have like 11 of them, okay? But you see that you have 11 standards in development, okay? And last October, we again put 4 of them, okay? Just want to mention, you don't see it well, but 27560 here is on consent record information structure, okay? So the idea, and it's launched by the Kantara initiative, but actually the idea is in consent, you might want to, you give your consent, but you also want to have a receipt, okay? So a proof that something is there, and you want to show that the receipt is managed, okay? And this will be, I think, a standard on this, okay? You have lots of things on organizational aspects. So you see here, organizational privacy risk management, 27557, that's pushed by Microsoft actually. But basically, at standardization level, the today trend, because it's an easy copy and paste, is to provide recommendations to organizations, okay? And organizations, they are following the 27 series, okay, 27001, 27002, to make sure that their information system is secure, okay? And so they did the same for privacy, because of course, the organization that collect data, they will have to collect data into their information system, okay? So this makes sense, and I was told that in the world, there are about 40,000 companies that are certified against security, and they are launching a similar program for privacy. And of course, if only 1/3 of the organization are certified on privacy, it's going to be like 15,000 organizations. So it's a huge thing, and and actually this is reflected in the standard 27701 that you see here, extension to 27001, 27002 for privacy. This standard was published in August 2019, and it was the bestseller in the world in terms of standards. Okay.
Antonio,
so,
could you
yes.
highlight which items you are standardized in privacy?
Yeah, so all those things are standardized. I'm going to get more in detail in this picture. Okay, so you have a better view. So, well, actually, no, I need to get more, because so here you have a list, and if you get to the website, you will see it. Okay. Actually, what I can do is actually to show to you the screen. So I'm going to just change my things and get there. It's a little bit easier, so that you can have a look. Okay. So yeah, that's the best way to have a look. Okay. So I'm even bigger. Okay, so here you have the list of things, and the one that is quite important today is this one, okay? This one, 27701 extensions, okay? So the editor is a British, and you see here the story, and it was published in in August 2019, okay? It's a management standard, and there is an obligation that the management standard is has a number that is terminating with 01 in ISO, so they changed it to 27701. Okay, so the number is quite good, and 27552 is a number that is no longer used. Okay, so that's the thing. Okay, maybe I should show the one I mentioned on consumer records. So this is consent record information structure. So the editor is from the Kantara initiative, and you see it explains how you manage a recorded consent. Okay, so a consent is a piece of information that is very important, and you must handle it, you must protect it, and you must make sure that you comply with it, okay? So because in the consent, you can say, I'm consenting to option A. You are tracing my virus, but only for option A, not for option B, okay? That's the thing. Maybe then I could just mention this one that is important. 31700, privacy by design for consumer goods and services, okay? This is a very big standard. I'm fully involved there. I'm not the editor. It's like a team of 20 people working on the editing, and maybe about 50 to 100 people working on the standard, okay? So this will be a standard where explaining how privacy by design will be applied, and also how assurance and certification will take place, okay? So I want to get back to my slides here. Current Trialog work. So interesting to show to you how it's working and why I could work. Okay, you see here in yellow liaison. Okay, and actually European projects or any organization can have a liaison with standardization. Okay, and Prepare was the support action on privacy by design, and we had the liaison with the place where everything takes place in terms of privacy. And I am the liaison officer, and this is how I got to be editor of this one, Privacy Engineering for System Lifecycle Process, which was published in September. Okay, and then there was a liaison. Actually, I'm the liaison officer between AIoTI. AIoTI is the Alliance for IoT Initiative. That's the PPP that is in Europe, and they work on IoT. And of course, it means that we have to have a liaison with SC41. Okay, SC41 is the standard place where we work on IoT, and there are a number of important standards, but two in which I'm working. One is IoT semantic interoperability. I'm the editor. Okay, so it's not about privacy, but it's about other things that are important at the IoT level. And then you have IoT reference architecture, and here, of course, it's not only about privacy, but it includes the necessity to integrate all the elements for safety, security, and privacy, what we call trustworthiness. Okay, so this one is super important, and it should include the details for privacy. Okay, I haven't mentioned, but there is a standard that is ongoing, so 3149 on IoT trustworthiness. Okay, and again, it's related to privacy, security, and the like. Okay, so you can see that there are a number of types of standards. One is architecture, and there is a major work ongoing in ISO to align all future architecture standards, because actually there are actually a kind of Babel Tower approach where all those architecture standards are not aligned with each other and are even competing, redundant, or contradictory. Okay, so actually I'm the leader of this one. This is very important. Okay, then you have a number of security and privacy. You see, that's for the engineering aspect. You have privacy preference management here. So I'm co-editor. That's the Japan that is leading. Okay, and this is related, of course, with the right of the consumer. Okay, then you have privacy by guidelines for smart cities. I will save one slide just after on this. Okay, because I think this is important. It relates fully with the ecosystem issue. You have big data, security, and privacy, data sharing agreements. So I contributed something on the ecosystem. Well, things that are new, I'm the editor, the rapporteur of this one, Impact of AI on Privacy. And we're studying currently 132 use cases of AI all over the place and see what are the impact on privacy. Okay, 31700 I mentioned. Okay, and you have things that are actually not related to privacy or only indirectly. So I mentioned for a guideline for cybersecurity framework. Okay, and this one, interesting, the future standard for road vehicle cybersecurity engineering. This I'm involved in this one. I'm representing the French national body, and this one involves hundreds of people because they need to have the standard available. It's nearly completed because there are regulations at the United Nations level for vehicle homologation on cybersecurity, and there will be a certification. Okay, and when they do the risk analysis, they have four items to take into account. One is safety, obviously. Okay, One is financial, but actually financial to the driver. Okay, so if there is an accident, how much it will cost to the driver. Okay, you have O, operational, which is actually whether the car is working, and then you have P for privacy. So they have four criteria, and the fourth one is privacy, just to show to you that how important this is. Okay, and actually that's my last slide before I can leave the floor for questions. I started to work on 27570 privacy guideline for smart cities because of the European Innovation Platform for Smart Cities and Communities. That was started in 2015, I guess. And I was involved because I wanted to make sure that privacy was at stake. Okay, so what happens is that when they created those working groups, they realized that the citizen engagement was important. Okay, and then I proposed to have a chapter on, let's say, privacy in that one. Okay, so it's still ongoing, not as well as I would like, but it was the place where I could work with a number of cities, and I was involved like 2 or 3 years ago in several seminars and webinars involving nearly 20 cities. Okay, and we even went into doing some privacy impact assessment recommendation. So I got a lot of knowledge about the issue, and I promoted this to ISO, and so therefore this standard is nearly on the verge of being published. Okay, so it's about the processes which the ecosystem must take into account. Okay, you can see that again we show the things, terms such as governance chain, supply chains, and data sharing chains. Okay, by the way, the terminology will change a little bit because we will no longer call it data sharing chain, but it's the same thing. Okay, and then there is a section which shows the myriads of standards that those smart city must use. But if there is one thing that must use in common, is the process for making it happen. Okay, so we identify 5 processes. One is the governance. Okay, that's the most important. Then the data sharing, the risk management, the engineering, and the citizen engagement. Okay, and in a nutshell, all those processes follow this kind of simple big picture where you have an ecosystem governance body. So the ecosystem governance body, it could be, so what they were saying is it could be the municipality, okay? And in Europe, that could be, well, no. So actually, I was told there were 3 cases, okay? So in more like in Asia, in China, the governance body could be actually the municipality, okay? So it's top down, okay? Then in Europe, it could be, and they were mentioning Barcelona as a city, okay? So it could be more like a citizen engagement base. So it's a number of people, they agree, and they set the policies, okay? And then they said in North America, this guy here could be a big company, a GAFA, okay? Whatever, okay? Of course, we have our preference, obviously, but whatever, if you want to solve it and to have things proper to work, you need to have that kind of organization so that actually everyone knows he has some responsibilities, okay? And if I need to to summarize in a nutshell, the objective is the ecosystem governing body is agreeing on, I'm using the term of EDPS, what we call best available techniques, which really means we have agreed on the solutions we put in place to promote and to protect the citizen, okay? And the second thing is this is changing because the solution of today is not the solution of in 2 years' time. So we apply continuous improvement, okay? So basically, in an ecosystem, you only have those 2 things to solve, okay? How do we agree on the technique? So this is what we call best available techniques, okay? And the second thing is continual improvement here. So I'm done, okay, and I'm ready for questions, doubts, or whatever that you would like to ask, okay?
Antonio, many thanks for, as usual, very rich presentation and for your undiscussed ability to combine, of course, technical background with more legal or social aspects. I have to say that I'm always fascinated by this kind of idea that you have of system of systems that we have already been discussed many times, and I think that it's really a key kind of idea to understand what is going on, and also by the kind of work that you are doing on standards.
I mentioned the thing. So this comes from people working on system engineering or complex system engineering. So MIT or whatever. Okay, in France you have some organization. Okay, they have actually started nearly 20 years ago, because they started. That's where we started to have complex systems. Okay, and they came up with a system of systems, and you had a lot of documentations in the let's say in the academy and things like that. And only last year we had the 3 standards, okay? And they explain things that are very simple. So the first of all is the emerging capability. So you have IoT systems, and actually they appear dynamically on the internet, okay? Each time you add a new system, maybe you add a capability, okay? So how did we check the impact of this to the rest? And this is actually the only question that is asked. So this emerging thing is something we have to be careful, okay? And the second thing is they mention is governance, okay? Actually, they call it a taxonomy. They have actually 4 categories of taxonomy elements in SOS. One, so I forgot the qualification, but the first one is yes, directed SOS, okay? This is when one company is dictating the whole thing. It could be a big GAFA, actually, okay? The second is, so then I forgot the name, but the second is where you have an alliance, okay? So we get to this alliance and we agree on how the system will work, okay? So for instance, OASC is exactly this. So you will go there and you will agree on the minimum interoperability stuff, okay? This is the second category of governance, okay? The third is something that is a much more, let's say, wild, is actually that we don't have an alliance, but we have standards that are popping up and people select them, okay? And so there's no governance. You just decide because you think this is the right way. And the last one is where you have no governance, so actually it doesn't work, actually, I have to say. And they say the only example they know, it's the internet, okay? There's no governance. So it's a platform, basically.
Yeah. Let's see if we have some question from the floor. Please introduce yourself and feel free to ask any question to Antonio.
I would like to start myself, Mario Diaz speaking. In fact, Antonio, I think I understand very well. For me, an IoT system is a system of system in itself. For instance, when you talk about V2X, is a system of system and could be an IoT system at the end of the day, if we consider that the automobile is a node in the sense of IoT, because it's a cyber physical system. Inside you have sensors, etc., but you have a complete system inside that we will communicate like the other sensors, simple sensor nodes. And for me, this vehicle to infrastructure, vehicle to vehicle, at the end of the day, are different systems, and they have the same behavior than IoT systems. In my mind, I push to recognize that an IoT system is a system of system, because the sensor node itself is also a system, simple or complex, like a robot or a vehicle or something like that.
I just agree with you, and so we have a matter of terminology, but people are putting the border at the wrong level. But I just agree, because actually, basically, people, when they think about IoT, so you have the simple IoT system and the complex IoT systems, and some of them are really simple, so maybe it's just one system. But in many cases, in most cases, IoT systems are already systems of systems. Okay, so what the ISO is saying, the definition is very simple. Okay, a system. So, but we can argue. Okay, they say that within a system of system, a system is managed and operated independently. So that's the only decision. So of course you can agree or not, but if you take this definition, then it changes a little bit the way you will structure your things. And the reason why this is important is because you have different organizations with different responsibilities, and you need to govern them. Okay, this is the point, that is where actually we are estimating the governance issue about that. Okay, because if you have only one company that is operating, so if I had only one company, a GAFA, for instance, becomes a car manufacturer, which is, I think, something some of the people have thought about. Okay, you know, those Google cars. Okay, so then one company is doing the whole thing. Then, well, according to the ISO definition, you could say it's, of course, it's a very complex system, but it's only one system because the governance of it is already managed. Okay, so we need to have the higher level of ecosystem governance when different organizations have to agree how they behave together. Okay, this is quite important to take that into account. So it's very much organizational at the end of the day.
Yeah, but now we arrive to another point: governance. I think here, for instance, in our pilot lines, when you see that a real system of systems, you have an ecosystem, but you don't have a governance. We, at least, for instance, in the in ActiveEdge, we didn't have a governance. Like, the governance should be done inside the project at each deployment site. This is my understanding. And at the end of the day, probably with the municipality, that's what I don't know if they can play strictly the role that you mentioned with governance. From another side, when we see that could happen in the future, I think you are talking about cloud computing, you are talking about grand players like Amazon, Microsoft, etc. But what will happen when we go for edge computing? When I believe that we have many individual companies working, creating individual networks or system inside, they are not need completely governance, but they need privacy. And I think for me, this is the focus what I see.
Yeah, exactly. So you just highlight the complexity of the thing, okay? And we need to have an approach for managing it and governance, okay? And I would say the smart cities will have a terrible problem if this is not solved, and it will not be their fault, okay? So this is important that we solve it, the ecosystem issue, okay, or the trust issue, whatever, because this is what will bring let's say, us to the next stage of deployment, where we're sure that we can develop things because we have the right process and tools to do it. I agree with you on that.
Okay, but also I agree with you that there is consent is the key point. This is the entry point for privacy, and I think I have never seen, and I would like to see what should be the. For instance, in my belief, the consent could be the the pointer for a database, and you have access to this database if you have consent. And this database, this is how I see privacy, and then where you can delete, update, identify if these things and that are in accordance with the GDPR. And I would like to see something there in the new presentations.
Yeah, this is the personal data.
Go on, Antonio, because then I want to leave the floor for other interventions.
Okay, so yeah, you have moves around that called the personal data ecosystem or mydata.org, where actually you have this, but it's one solution, I would say, and I hope it will get through, but it's only one solution. There might be several. Okay.
Let's see if there is somebody else. Otherwise, I want to give the floor to Francesco and Alice.
Yes, Pasquale, I have another question. I'm Antonio Landi from IIP.
Yes.
Do you hear me? Yes. Hi, Antonio. Yes. With regard to the life cycle of consent, from a practical point of view, in order to prove that in a certain period, in case of a challenge from both from the data subjects or in case of inspection by the data protection authority, what do you think is the best way in order to improve a mechanism or a tool to show that you have the consent from the data subject in a certain period in order to assess the validity of the consent? And
so yeah, it's a very good question. And of course, when it comes to big data or whatever for applications where you collect data, this is important. So to my view, one solution, maybe there are others, okay, is that you must have a consent manager, okay, or a privacy preference manager, and that's the standard I'm working on, where you have a clear link between the consent and the data that is let's say owned by the consent the patient. Okay, and each time you access the data, you must check the validity and log the transaction. So it's a register of processing. Okay, and this log must be secure and protected, because it can have legal force at the end, so that when the user says, prove to me that you only used my data for this, you can show it, and the lawyer can say, yes, that's right, because he used this technology for protecting his log, and his log was certified or whatever. Okay, I'm telling you something for the future, because I'm not sure that those things exist, but it would be easy, or we have no problem to make this happen if people want it. Okay, so it's just we have to implement the tools, all the things. Okay, and this is quite important. Yes.
Thank you. I agree with your.
Yes, who was speaking there? Please.
I think it was Antonio.
Antonio?
Yes, Pasquale. No, I was saying that I agree with the Antonio solutions, and I think it's a good practice in order to prove compliance with the GDPR and in general with data protection rules. Yes. Thank you so much.
Anybody else before I leave the floor to Francesco and Alice to conclude? Francesco, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. It was very interesting, and we really thank you because it was precious for us in order to enhance our debate on IoT. So I would like to thank you, everyone, and we will see each other in the next webinar after Easter, for sure. And thank you again for having joined us, and thank you to Antonio Kung.
Sure,
thank you very much, Antonio. I just want to say that the recording of the webinar will be available on NG-IoT website, and for the next webinar, as usual, we will circulate the information in advance through our mailing list and also on the NG-IoT website. Thank you very much for being with us today. Thank you. Thank you, Antonio.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.